Welcome to the Time to Lead series. Today I want to talk about the ostrich as leader. To understand the ostrich as leader, let's look at the two basic components of effective leadership. That is, on the one hand, the clarity that the leader has about where they want the team, the organization, the country to go. We're talking about strategy, vision, ends. And the second element is whether the leader has deep understanding about how to get there, how to reach those goals. Now we're talking about tactics, operations, and means. Now, where does the ostrich leader fit into this? The ostrich leader is actually weak on both aspects. That's why I have to change in font here. The ostrich leader is not really very clear in terms of strategy, nor excels in terms of tactics. So let's look at some of the characteristics in a little bit more detail. With ostrich leaders, the ends are not clearly defined. What do they want to achieve? Ostrich leaders also struggle to reconcile multiple conflicting and often unclear ends with limited means. They are unable to accurately assess the constraints that they are facing, which constraints cannot be overcome, which constraints can be overcome, and understanding the difference between the two. They also do not have a clear idea where they are going or how to get there. And therefore, given that, ostrich leaders have a high likelihood of leadership failure unless they do something about that. One example of an ostrich leader, in my view, is President George W. Bush, who was president from 2001 through 2009. His initial vision was compassionate conservatism, although it was never really quite clear what compassionate conservatism really is, but that vision was quickly forgotten in the wake of the terrible 9/11 attacks. Next, he thought about invading, and he invaded Iraq, Afghanistan, Katrina hit, and then, of course, later also the global financial crisis, although that certainly wasn't his doing. But the issue here is, what were the end goals for each? Let's look at Iraq. What was the end goal of the invasion of Iraq? Was it a free and democratic Iraq, like the neocons wanted? Was there any evidence that actually there was a desire in Iraq for a free and democratic Iraq? And actually, was it possible with the three different groups that hated each other, the Shias, the Sunnis, and the Kurds? If the Saddam regime would be toppled, what would come in place? What would be the position of the Iraqi army that was dismantled, but that meant there was no guarantee for internal peace? All these things were not very clear, so the end game was never particularly clear. And when it comes to Afghanistan, in 2020, there are still American troops in Afghanistan. It's the longest running war in American history. Also there was no clear end goal. When you look at his leadership, I'm reminded of what Churchill once said, that it is easier to start a war than to end one. And that is the point. It is very difficult to end one unless your end goals are achieved. But if your end goals aren't clear, how do you ever know that you're achieved? There was also unclarity about the means that he had at his disposal. There were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq. It was based on faulty information, and there was at the time already indication that the information was less than clear-cut, as Secretary of State Powell later acknowledged. Trillions of dollars were spent on these wars. But at the same time, taxes were cut. Now, clearly that doesn't go together, so the budget deficit ballooned. Inadequate equipment for the military in Iraq, at least after the Saddam army was defeated, because then we were moving into urban warfare, where actually the military didn't have the right equipment. It took a very long time for that equipment actually to arrive. At the meantime, well, trillions of dollars were spent on Iraq. China became much stronger and a much more dangerous rival than Iraq would ever be. And the removal of Iraq also out of the equation, remove the bulwark against a much stronger Iran with a bigger economy and a much larger population. So I remember that at the time that the Bush presidency was still there was this cover in The Economist, which was said the incredible shrinking presidency. It was already talking about early in his second term, where is the president? He is completely shrinking. This is was a very powerful article that I scanned here, the cover of the magazine. It never really recovered. Economists gave a number of ideas how to recover. It never really recovered. And President Bush, at least by presidential historians, is rated as one of the worst presidential leaders in the 20th century. So clearly an ostrich is not, let's say, the right place to be. But if you are an ostrich, there is something that you can do about. And in my book, I identify a couple of people that started out as ostriches, but actually over time moved to become much more effective leaders. They were able to get a better grip on the means that they had at their disposal. They were able to develop a vision for their lives, and they ended up to be leaders that really changed history. And that is also something that is possible